Hello, friends. It's a beautiful day today, isn't it? I'm your host, Zach McDaniel, and this is Screen Pass. Welcome to the show. Let's start off by talking about the top performers of Week 2. I got 5 top performers for you. Number 5, quarterback Will Grier out of West Virginia. Will Grier was 16 for 22 for 329 yards and 4 touchdowns at halftime. This was at halftime. Uh, he finished 19 for 25, 352 yards and 5 touchdowns overall. Number 4, Josh Rosen, quarterback from UCLA. Rosen, the chosen one, was 22 for 25. He had 329 yards and 5 touchdowns. Josh Rosen became the first Pac-12 quarterback in the last 20 years to complete 85% of his passes and throw for 5 or more touchdowns and 300 yards in a game. Incredible stuff by Josh Rosen. Number 3, Clemson's defensive line. I watched this game, and wow, did they look incredible. That defensive line is the best defensive line in the country, hands down. They played Auburn. Auburn's quarterback is Jarrett Stidham. He only threw for 79 yards. He was sacked 11 times by Clemson's defensive line for a combined loss of 72 yards. On 35 dropbacks, Auburn gained only 7 yards. And on Auburn's final drive, Jarrett Stidham was sacked on first, second, and third down to bring up 4th and 25. Not good, not very good by the Auburn offense, but it was just a stellar performance by Clemson's defensive line. Number 2, Lamar Jackson, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. Some say he's going to win it this year. I still think it's too early to tell, but he had a very good performance Saturday. 25 for 39 with 393 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had 19 carries for 132 yards and 3 touchdowns. Overall, he had 525 total yards and 6 touchdowns in the 47-35 win over North Carolina. And by the way, that was the most individual yards allowed in North Carolina football history. Great stuff. My number 1 top performer of Week 2, quarterback Baker Mayfield out of Oklahoma. Baker, the playmaker, was 27 for 35, 386 yards and 3 touchdowns against Ohio State. A lot of people have him at number 1 in the Heisman Trophy discussion. Still too early to tell, but if he keeps playing like this, he'll win it, no doubt. Now, let's move in to my top not performances of Week 2. Number 5, I got Ohio State's pass defense. As I just said, Baker Mayfield was 27 for 35, 386 yards, 3 touchdowns. Ohio State's pass defense is 130th in the nation. That could also be from last week against Indiana, but there's 130 teams, and Ohio State, who's supposed to be DBU, I'm not seeing it. 130th in the nation, not a good performance by Ohio State's pass defense. Number 4, Ohio State's offense. J.T. Barrett was 19 for 35, 183 yards, 1 interception. The team had 167 yards on the ground, and they lost 31-16. Now, where have we seen a failing Ohio State offense before? I think last year, to their last game against Clemson, they lost 31-0. And Kevin Wilson, they hired him to be their offensive coordinator. So everybody said, wow, this offense is going to get good real fast. Not seeing it. They better pick things up. A lot of players from around college football, a lot of recruits from high school are even calling for J.T. Barrett to be benched. We'll see what happens. Number 3, shocker, Baylor. Yeah, they lost last week to a team that shouldn't have beat them. They lost this week to a team that also should not have beat them. They lost to the University of Texas of San Antonio, which is a member of the Conference USA, and until Saturday, they have not beaten a Power 5 school. And Baylor lost at home, by the way, just to make things worse. Baylor's quarterback, the transfer from Arizona, Anu Solomon, didn't look very good. Now, let me say this. As a redshirt freshman at Arizona in 2014, he led Arizona to the Pac-12 South, to a title and the Fiesta Bowl, throwing for 3,700 plus yards, 28 touchdowns. Now, the next year he had some concussions, still threw for 2,000 plus, 20 touchdowns, and then a sprained knee hurt him that next year. But I think it's something to do with Baylor. It's not the quarterback's fault, even though they said they were going to bench Anu Solomon. Baylor, I think they're just in a mess ever since Art Briles left. But they need to pick it up this next week at Duke, who has a very high-powered offense from what we've seen so far. Number 2, another shocker, Texas A&M. The game with Nichols, who is in fact an FCS team, they were tied 14-14 in the fourth quarter. Kellen Mond was 12 for 21, 105 yards. Chase Forcade, the Nichols quarterback, was 13-25 with 264 yards. Texas A&M did get out alive with a win, but come on, it's Nichols. They should have won that game by 40 points. Come on. Number 1 of my not top performances, Jarrett Stidham, or Auburn's offense as a whole. Jarrett Stidham had 79 yards passing, 37 yards of total offense if you count the yards lost by the 11 sacks that Clemson's defense had. Cameron Petaway only had 74 yards rushing, 80 yards rushing as a team if you don't count the sacks. Not a very good performance by Auburn's offense as a whole, but good effort by Clemson's defense. Moving on, let's talk about the 3 biggest upsets that happened this past week in the college football world. Let's start off at number 3, Middle Tennessee State versus Syracuse. This is kind of embarrassing for Syracuse. It was at Syracuse. They paid Middle Tennessee State a bunch of money to come play them, and they lost. To make matters even worse for Syracuse, they lost to former head coach Scott Schaefer, who was fired during the 2015 season. Big upset bad for Syracuse. Number 2, the University of Texas of San Antonio versus Baylor. In week 1, as I said earlier, the Bears suffered a loss to an FCS school, Liberty. This week, it was to the Roadrunners. As I said, they have never beaten a Power 5 conference school. But both of these losses for Baylor were at home. Baylor lost 17-10. Number 1, the best upset of the week, Eastern Michigan versus Rutgers. Week 1, we all watched the Rutgers-Washington game. I believe the end score was like 30-14. And everyone was saying, wow, Rutgers looks very good. They look so impressive this year. You know, they gave Washington a game week 1. But unfortunately, Rutgers also gave Eastern Michigan a game week 2. Rutgers ended up losing 16-13 to a team they should not have lost to. So yeah, that was my biggest upsets. So let's move on. The biggest games for week 3. Number 6. I got 6 games for you. Number 6, Ole Miss at Cal. I really want to take Cal here, but I'm going to go Ole Miss. Shea Patterson, he had a very good game last week. I believe he had the most yards in a single game in Ole Miss history, I believe. So yeah, I'm taking Ole Miss for that matchup. Number 5, Oklahoma State at Pitt. I'm going to go Oklahoma State. Mason Rudolph has looked terrific this whole season. Pitt's defense is not going to be able to stop him. And Pitt's offense, with Max Brown as the quarterback, they're not going to be able to put points up on Oklahoma State. So Oklahoma State will be the winner. Number 4, LSU versus Mississippi State, an SEC matchup. I'm going to go LSU. Danny Etling looks improved this season. And LSU, they've always got a very good defense. They get Arden Key back this week. So LSU. Number 3, Texas at USC. There was a lot of hype coming in this season for Texas and USC. But, you know, Texas lost 51-41 the first week to Maryland. USC still undefeated, and I still got USC in the playoffs. So USC, Sam Darnold, he's going to have a very good game, along with Ronald Jones, their star running back. Number 2, Tennessee at Florida. Florida hasn't played in a couple of weeks. Their last game was against Michigan. They didn't look very good. Neither did Tennessee against Georgia Tech, but at least Tennessee won. So with that being said, I'm going to go Tennessee. Florida, they got something wrong with their quarterbacks. You know, they hadn't had a very good quarterback since Tebow was there. I'm going Tennessee. Number 1, Clemson at Louisville, the big game. Now, I wanted to go with Louisville. Since it is at home, they have Lamar Jackson. But not so fast. I'm taking Clemson and their big time defense, very good defensive line. I'm taking Clemson. Kelly Bryant, he looked okay. Um, First game against Power Five opponent in Auburn. Um, Gotta go Clemson. All right, last segment for the day. I'm gonna give you my playoff picks. At number 4, I'm going Florida State. Don't boo me. Don't boo me off the stage. Not yet. Let me explain why I got Florida State at number 4. Their defense in that first game against Alabama was very impressive. They held Alabama to under 300 yards for the first time since 2014. So even though they're bringing in a true freshman quarterback, that defense is going to carry them to the playoffs. Number 3, Oklahoma. They played fantastic against Ohio State, which, quite frankly, I'm off the Ohio State train. No more. They didn't. They just looked very unimpressive. But I'm going Oklahoma. Baker, the playmaker, he's a beast. Probably going to New York for the Heisman. He'll be one of the contenders. Number 2, USC. We talk about contenders, and you can't talk about that unless you also bring up quarterback Sam Darnold's name. USC has a very good chance to make it to the playoffs. They beat Stanford last week in a convincing fashion, 42-24, USC. And then number 1, I got Alabama. Roll Tide. They always have a very good defense. I don't really see. I don't think that there's going to be a team that will beat Alabama this season. Yeah, but that is it. That's the show. Make sure to follow Screen Pass on Twitter at @screen_pass. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you next time.